Alright, hi everyone. Welcome to this online video, which is on chapter 6 of the science textbook on the chapter of model of cells. So in this chapter, right, we're just going to build on what we learned in the previous lesson, which is exactly what are the different parts that can be found inside a cell. But before we get started, let's take a look at this animation, which shows you what can be found inside the cell.
All cells have three things in common, no matter what type of cell they are. All cells have a cell membrane, which separates the inside of the cell from its environment, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like fluid, and DNA, which is the cell's genetic material. There are two broad categories of cells. The first category is eukaryotic cells. They have organelles, which include the nucleus and other special parts. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced, complex cells, such as those found in plants and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. They don't have a nucleus or membrane-enclosed organelles. They do have genetic material, but it's not contained within a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always one-celled or unicellular organisms, such as bacteria. So, what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are the specialized parts of a cell that have unique jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled, spread-out form of DNA found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles float around in cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes may wander freely within the cytoplasm or attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated as ER. There are two types of ER. Rough ER has ribosomes attached to it, and smooth ER doesn't have ribosomes attached to it. Vacuoles are sac-like structures that store different materials. Here, in this plant cell, the central vacuole stores water. The mitochondrion is an organelle that is the powerhouse for both animal and plant cells. During a process called cellular respiration, the mitochondria make ATP molecules that provide the energy for all of the cell's activities. Cells that need more energy have more mitochondria. Some organisms, such as plants, that are photoautotrophic, meaning they capture sunlight for energy, have cells with an organelle called a chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens. It's green because it has a green pigment called chlorophyll. Plant cells also have a cell wall outside of their cell membranes that shape, support, and protect the plant cell. Animal cells never have a cell wall.
Okay, just a quick recap. Okay, so we actually use models to represent cells because most of the cells are actually coming in different shapes and different sizes, but models allow us to identify the typical common features that can be found in the cell. So it allows us to understand it better, but of course models with it come certain limitations. So some of the limitations will be that it's less accurate, it's less detailed, it's usually overly simplified, and of course you cannot apply one model to every single cell, right? So a model can only tell you so much, but for different cells you might need to read up a bit more in order to understand what exactly can be found within a cell and what exactly is the shape and size. So in the previous lesson we actually went through what are different parts of a cell. So just a quick recap. Okay, this surface that is found on the exterior side of the cell is actually called the cell surface membrane. Okay, you should have already copied this down on your notes itself. These are what I call the vacuoles. These are tiny air pockets inside which are functioning as storage spaces within a cell. This one in the middle is your nucleus, and of course within your nucleus you will find all these tiny threads. It looks like strings. They're actually what I call chromosomes. If you are interested, you can go and read up a bit more about chromosomes. Basically, they are related to your DNA, but they are not exactly the same thing. Next, within this jelly-like substance, the interior part is actually my cytoplasm. So these are the key parts of an animal cell that you are supposed to take note of. Of course, there are other structures. So some of you might have heard of this structure called a mitochondria. Okay, so what exactly is a mitochondria? I can explain a bit more about this thing in the next few slides, but let me go through about the plant cells first. For the structure of a plant cell, the thing that makes it the most unique is that there's a few parts that makes it different from an animal cell. Number one, these are called chloroplasts. Right? Only green plants will have chloroplasts, and within the chloroplast is where you can find the chlorophyll. Okay, so the chlorophyll is actually the green color substance that is found inside the chloroplast. Next, the cell wall. Now, the cell wall of a plant cell is made up of cellulose, and this is a very strong structure that helps to protect the plant cell and prevents it from being damaged. Thirdly, is the vacuole. Now, the plant cell, unlike the animal cell, if you recall from the previous slide, the animal cell actually has many small vacuoles. But for the plant cell, it's actually a central storage area, which means it's a large, single, and central vacuole. And this actually contains what we call the cell set, right? So all these things should have been written down in your notes already. But what we're going to do today, right, we're actually going to use an interesting way to actually summarize what exactly are each of these parts so that we can remember it better. So let's take a look at this blank space. Now, if you want, you can actually take out a piece of foolscap paper. As we go along, you can actually draw in the structure. So what I want you all to take note of now is that I'm going to show you an example of a factory. Now, you know that there's a lot of factories in Singapore, and factories actually have different buildings within it. So let's take a look at what I'm referring to. Okay, so assuming that this is how a factory looks like. Okay, I know it's not the best drawing, but let's assume that these are the fences around the factory. Of course, there's certain entry points that allows you to enter the factory and exit the factory. So let's assume that there's a few doors. Okay, let's say that this is a door or a gate for the car to enter. This is a gate for the car to enter, and maybe at the back, you can say there's some back gate and some back gates. Okay, so if you look at this entire drawing, right, you realize that the factory actually has a perimeter around it, but there are some locations for the cars or for the people to actually enter and leave. So this entire surface outside, right, is actually what I can refer to as the cell surface membrane. Okay, it functions like the fences around our school. So our school gate, our school main door, back door, so and so forth, right, allows people to enter and leave. But something that makes it special is that it is partially permeable. Why is this important? This is important because a fence is only useful if it allows only certain people or certain substances to enter and leave. If everything can just go in and out, then there's no fence. Okay, so a fence, just like a cell surface membrane, actually selects what can enter and what can leave. And in this case, we are selecting based on the size of the object. Of course, an aeroplane cannot come into our school gate, right? But a car can come into our school gate depending on the size. So this is how a factory looks like. Now, we're going to add some stuff inside the factory in order to complete this entire diagram on the cell. Within a factory, right, there must be a headquarters, which is the main office. So let's say that this is the main office. Okay, like in the school, we have our general office. Now, what is this similar to? The main office is where all the boss and all the people who are in charge of running the day-to-day activities of the cell, or rather of the factory, actually they are found in. So this is actually just like my nucleus. Now, a nucleus helps to control activities within a cell. So it will tell the cell when to do whatever it needs to do, be it for growth, be it to divide and whatnot. So likewise, the main office is there to allow us to do that. Within a factory, there must be certain containers or certain storage spaces to store the products that you have made in the factory or to store certain things that you have purchased into the factory. Okay, so for instance, let's say that there's a few storage boxes inside. Okay, because this is a big factory, so there's a few storage boxes that I need. Now, all these storage boxes are here to store things like food, like products, like things that I make in the factory. Okay, and these are actually like my vacuoles. Because the purpose of vacuoles is to actually store air, liquid, or nutrients within the cell. Next, this entire area of the factory, the entire space that's found within the fence, are where all the activities happen. Be it you're moving things around, be it you're packing stuff, be it you're taking things off, be it you're discussing with a friend and whatnot. So this entire space that's found inside is actually my cytoplasm, because cytoplasm is where cell activities happen. Cytoplasm is where cell activities happens. So it's the space within it that allows all these activities to happen. Lastly, I'm going to introduce you a new structure, because if you recall previously, we went through nucleus, vacuoles, cell surface membrane, as well as cytoplasm. Now I'm going to share with you another one. Okay, so in a factory, right, there must be a sort of a power station that supplies electricity and whatnot to the entire factory. So let's say that I have a power station here. So within a cell, right, all cells will actually have this power station, and this power station is actually what I call the mitochondria. Okay, now this mitochondria is a new thing for you guys. So if you need, you can actually write this down. Okay, so your mitochondria actually helps to release energy from this process that's called respiration. Okay, we won't go into that for this part. You'll learn this in Sec 3 if you take bio. But your mitochondria actually allows you to release energy from respiration. So likewise in the factory, right, this is like a power station. It supplies the electricity for everything to happen within itself. So this entire example that I gave you will be more or less like a animal cell. Because within an animal cell, you have all these structures that you see over here. But what about in the case of a plant cell? Now, how will a plant cell differ from an animal cell? Okay, I would like you guys to actually go and try and draw out how you would imagine a factory that's supposed to represent a plant cell should look like. Okay, and I will get you to submit this piece of drawing when school reopens. So basically what I want to try out is that if this is my example for an animal cell, how will a plant cell's one look like? Okay, try to create a model, try to create an analogy for yourself and see if you can follow what is supposed to be taken note of. Okay, with that, we have summed up on the structures of the cell, and we'll move on to the next part of this lesson. Now, what exactly is the cell made up of? It's important for us to take note of some important details. Number one, only plant cells can have cell wall. Okay, so this is something that's unique for plant cells. Secondly, different cells will have different shapes. Not all animal cells are round, not all plant cells are rectangular. Let me give you an example. The root hair cell. The root hair cell is not going to be rectangular in structure because it's supposed to have this structure that is long and sticking out. And this structure is actually what I call the root hair. Okay, this structure is called the root hair. So this entire thing is a root hair cell, but it's not like your normal plant cell, because your normal plant cell is supposed to look like this, right? But this root hair cell looks different. It looks like there's a tail that's sticking out. Likewise for animal cells, right? Most of us are very used to cells like chick cells, red blood cells, which are usually round. But there are definitely animal cells that are not round. One example will be your sperm cells. Right? Your sperm cells look kind of like a tadpole because it has a tail. Right? So the shape and structure may be very different for different cells, and that's something to take note of. Thirdly, not all cells have nucleus. I think this was brought up in our previous lesson. Some of you actually mentioned that you know that a red blood cell does not have nucleus, and this is a very good example. Okay? Last but not least, do remember that at the end of the day, every single cell in the world is actually three-dimensional. Just like you and I, right? Even though we are looking at each other from the video cam or through a photo, but the actual organism is actually 3D in shape. Okay, so you must remember that a cell is actually 3D. So even if I give you images that looks like this, although it looks like a 2D photo, right? You must know that an animal cell is actually supposed to look something like this. It looks like a sphere, so it's supposed to be a ball. Okay, but of course, every time when we draw it and show you in the diagram, right, we can only show you one side of it, so it looks very, very flat, like an egg yolk. But actually, it's supposed to be a 3D image. And that's something that you need to take note of, because time to time you'll come across different structures, and they might look very different from what you're very used to. Some other things to take note of, there are actually interesting unicellular organisms that have both features of a plant cell and an animal cell, which means that they are somehow like an plant cell, but they are also like an animal cell. For instance, for this particular organism that you see over here, it actually behaves like a plant cell whereby it has chloroplast. You can look at all these structures inside, they are green in color. These are all the chloroplasts, a lot of them actually, okay? Which means that this cell, technically you expect it to be like a plant cell. But it's not a plant cell because it doesn't have a cell wall, which is what an animal cell would be like. So interestingly, in the unicellular organisms world, there are usually cells that can have such features. Can you think of a reason why they tend to have such features for unicellular organisms? Why do they tend to be able to have chloroplasts but yet not behaving fully like a plant? Okay, it's good to think about this because the interesting fact is that for the unicellular organisms kingdom, right, in their world, what happens is that they will need chloroplasts because it's meant to make food by photosynthesis, and it's because they might not have the ability to hunt and to get food, so they actually use chloroplasts to do that. However, they cannot behave like a plant because a plant, right, will actually stay stationary at its own location. So sometimes some of these organisms that's unicellular, right, they actually have tails. The tail actually allows them to move around the entire environment. So you can actually go and Google about these organisms called planktons. Okay, you can Google and read up more about this. They are actually microorganisms, which are unicellular organisms that survive usually within water bodies, and they actually are able to do quite a lot of features. Different planktons can do different kind of features. Some of them can do photosynthesis, some cannot. Yeah, so it's good to take note that although we learned that there's animal cell, there's plant cell, there are also some that falls in between. It's important to understand that the nucleus controls the cell, much like how our brain controls us. So in this diagram, right, I'm showing you the nucleus, and you realize that there's a lot of little structures inside it. In fact, it looks like a lot of little human beings inside. Okay, but these are not human beings. Inside is actually what I call the chromosomes. Now, in normal human cells, right, the nucleus actually contains 46 chromosomes, each nucleus. Okay, so in each human cell, the nucleus will contain 46 chromosomes, and these 46 chromosomes will contain DNA, and this DNA will decide how you appear like and how certain features of you will be like. So your DNA actually determines what kind of a person you are. Okay, so these 46 chromosomes are arranged in 23 pairs, and they can be found within the nucleus in the cell. So if you see on the diagram on the right side, right, you realize that you can arrange them into pairs, and you should end up with 23 pairs in total. I just want to bring your attention to this part on the bottom right. Okay, if you look at it, it's quite interesting. There's something called X and something called a Y chromosome. Instead of a proper pair, right, it's actually called X or Y chromosomes. Like some of it is called pair 1, some of it is called pair 2, pair 3, pair 4, pair 5, etc. But these two is actually called X and Y. Go and read up about it, go and Google about it to find out what exactly are they. Okay? If not, we'll move on to the next slide. Now, chromosomes will affect how the cell works and is responsible for heredity. Heredity refers to the inheritance or the passing down of characteristics. Right? So for instance, you look like the way you are because your parents, right, they actually pass down their genetic materials to you. Right? So when the sperm and the ovum fuse together during fertilization, it actually passes on some of the DNA to you, then it develops and end up as who you are. Moving on, just want to elaborate a bit on what exactly it can be found in a chromosome. So now chromosomes are made up of a substance that's called DNA. If you're interested in what DNA actually means, it's actually called deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, so it's quite a mouthful, hence most people just refer to it as DNA. Okay, so what happens is that DNA is actually controlling how the cell will function, how you will appear like, and it's actually passed on from parents to children, and hence it's responsible for whatever features that you actually gotten from your parents. So some of you might look more like your dad or more like your mom or a bit of both, etc. So all this is actually coded within the DNA itself. And DNA actually contains many different genes. Now, genes are smaller parts within the DNA. So if you look at the right side structure, right, this entire thing is called a chromosome, correct? Now within the chromosome, the entire thing is made out of DNA, and a small part of it, each small part is actually called a specific gene. And the gene will actually allow you to be responsible for certain characteristics, like for example your skin color, your eye color, the texture of your hair, etc., the size of your eyes, whatnot. So the gene actually controls all these little things. Okay, and with that, we would like to move on to the next slide. Just would like all of you to think about this. We can't discuss now, but I want you to think about why exactly are we supposed to study about the parts of different cells. Now, if all it takes is just to memorize the different parts, remember the different structures, the different functions, then why is there a need for us to actually study all these things? Or is it just because of exams? Now, it's important for us to think about all these questions because ultimately, when you're learning, right, you want to learn for the future so you can apply the knowledge. So start to think about this question, why exactly are you learning about the different parts of cells? And when we are back in class, I will explain more about this thing. Lastly, this is what I want all of you to do. Construct a table to compare and contrast between the structures that can be found within the animal cell, as well as the structures that can be found in the plant cell itself. And I would like you to complete worksheet 2 that has been given out before this week, as well as theory workbook exercise 6.2. And please upload worksheet 2 into the Google Classroom activity so that I can take a look at your work. But for theory workbook exercise 6.2, take note that we will go through this when we are back in school as a form of revision. So you just need to submit in your worksheet 2, which is 2 pages. Okay, and don't forget to draw in your analogy for the for how a plant cell will actually look like if you were to compare it in terms of the factory example that I gave you just now. Alright, that's all. Goodbye.